Namaskar, a warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Navneet Singh and with me is Reshma Tiwari, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring to you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Sitiveni Rambuka is the new Prime Minister of Fiji. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulates Sitiveni Rambuka, says he looks ahead to closer ties between the two countries. Afghanistan Taliban asks local and foreign NGOs not to allow women workers. US President Joe Biden nominates Indian-American Richard Verma to the top diplomatic position in the State Department. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina elected as the party president of Awami League for the 10th time in a row. India's President and Vice President send greetings to the nation on the eve of Christmas. Icy winter grips USA and the neighboring countries. Experience a lowest new record of -42 Fahrenheit under the spell of Arctic storm. And in cricket, India 100 runs away from winning the second and final test match against Bangladesh in Dhaka. Sitiveni Rambuka has become Fiji's Prime Minister after a coalition of parties voted to install him, signalling an end to Frank Bainimarama's 16 years in power. The appointment of Rambuka on Saturday ended 10 days of uncertainty after an election delivered a hung parliament. Fiji's Social Democratic Liberal Party, SODELPA, held the balance of power and on Friday voted to form a coalition with Rambuka's People's Alliance and the National Federation Party. Saturday's secret parliamentary vote for Prime Minister was closer than had been expected, with 28 members of parliament voting for Rambuka, while 27 voted in support of Bainimarama. Rambuka's coalition holds 29 seats in parliament, indicating that one member had broken ranks to vote in favor of the former Prime Minister. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi tweeted, "Congratulations at SL Rambuka on your election as the Prime Minister of Fiji. I look forward to working together to further strengthen the close and long-standing relations between India and Fiji." US President Joe Biden has nominated Indian-American Richard R. Verma to a top diplomatic position in the US Department of State. Biden announced his intent to nominate Verma as Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources. Verma is the Chief Legal Officer and Head of Global Public Policy at MasterCard. He was the United States Ambassador to India and Assistant Secretary of State for Legislative Affairs during the Obama administration. Earlier in his career, Verma was National Security Advisor to the United States Senator Harry Reid, Democratic Whip, Minority Leader, and then Majority Leader of the United States Senate. He is a veteran of the United States Air Force and received numerous awards and decorations, including the Distinguished Service Medal from the Department of State, the International Affairs Fellowship from the Council of Foreign Relations, and the Meritorious Service Medal from the United States Air Force. He was appointed to the President's Intelligence Advisory Board and is a former member of the Weapons of Mass Destruction and Terrorism Commission. He serves as a trustee of the Ford Foundation and is on numerous other boards, including the National Endowment for Democracy and Lehigh University.
The 22nd Council meeting of the ruling Awami League on Saturday re-elected Sheikh Hasina as the party president for the 10th time in a row. She became the longest-serving president of Awami League since 1981, when she first assumed this post. Senior Awami League leader Obaidul Qadir was also re-elected as the General Secretary of the party for the third consecutive term. Both of them were elected unopposed to the post for the next 3 years by around 7,000 councillors and delegates of the party. The two leaders will form the Central Committee of Awami League in due course. The new council has introduced nominal changes in the top decision-making body of the party, indicating a preference for continuity as the Awami League prepares for the forthcoming general elections scheduled to be held in January 2024. Addressing the meeting, Sheikh Hasina cautioned the Awami League leaders and activists about the conspiracies and asked them to focus on the marginalized people to transform Bangladesh into a developed, prosperous and smart country by 2041. Indian President and the Vice President have greeted the people on the eve of Christmas, marking the birth of Jesus Christ. In her message, President Draupadi Murmu said this festival is a symbol of peace and brotherhood for the entire mankind. She appealed to the people to take a pledge to adopt the divine teachings of Jesus Christ in their lives. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, in his message, said, Jesus Christ showed the path of love, empathy and kindness that make our life virtuous and bring tolerance and harmony in the society, which may eventually lead to lasting peace in the world.
Some 200 million Americans are fleeing the icy grip of a massive winter storm that has been linked to at least 19 deaths ahead of the holiday weekend. More than 1.5 million people lost power and thousands of flights were cancelled on Friday. The vast storm extends more than 2,000 miles, 3,200 kilometers from Texas to Quebec. A bomb cyclone, when atmospheric pressure plummets, has brought blizzard conditions to the Great Lakes on the US-Canada border. In Canada, Ontario and Quebec were bearing the brunt of the Arctic blast, with power cut to hundreds of thousands. Much of the rest of the country, from British Columbia to Newfoundland, was under extreme cold and winter storm warnings. They fled south to escape winter. Heavy snowfall was forecast in areas of Pennsylvania and Michigan. Buffalo, New York was expecting at least 35 inches. The National Weather Service reported 0-mile visibility there and posted video of whiteout conditions. Denver, Colorado dropped to minus 24 Fahrenheit on Thursday, its lowest point since the 1990s. Wichita, Kansas recorded its wildest wind chill since 2000. Nashville, Tennessee saw its temperatures plunge to below zero for the first time in 26 years. Casper, Wyoming set a new record low on Tuesday of minus 42 Fahrenheit. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a report on India's G20 presidency this week. India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant has said that with the year 2023 as International Year of Millets, India's G20 presidency aims to showcase the sustainable approach in every grain. In a tweet, he said that from entire millet-based meals in Udaipur to millet boxes for delegates in Mumbai, foregrounding agri-diversity is a top priority for India. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister hosted a millets lunch for the MPs in the Parliament. As India gets ready to host the G20 summit next year in September, more than 200 meetings have been planned in over 50 cities for the Sherpa track, finance track and engagement groups. Our Foreign Affairs editor, Dr. Atul Kumar Tiwari, takes a look at the major events and developments under India's G20 presidency this week.
G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
Gearing up to meet the challenges of health finance in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic prevention, preparedness and response and urban development issues under U20 topped the agenda this week for G20 under India's presidency. The week began on a positive note as Google's India-born CEO Sundar Pichai called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday, December 19th. He extended support to India's G20 presidency for an open and connected internet that works for all. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said it's important that the world continues to work together to leverage technology for human prosperity and sustainable development.
G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
The views expressed by G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant in an article titled The Path Ahead India and G20 in Mann Ki Baat booklet got a lot of traction. He reiterated that India's G20 presidency will be inclusive, ambitious, decisive and action-oriented, and the theme of One Earth, One Family, One Future highlights the need for collective action and unified goals. Mr. Kant wrote that the presidency of G20, a group that accounts for 85% of world's GDP, has always been a position of great honor and greater responsibility. And India will look to emerge as a bridge between the developed and developing nations for enhanced cooperation. The G20 Sherpa emphasized that mission life, or the lifestyle for environment, financing for sustainable development goals, green energy transitions, food security, and ensuring reliable supply chains for food and energy, along with digital transformation, will be India's key priority areas in the presidency of G20.
Our objective is to be the voice of the global south, and we will try and galvanize consensus for a Green Development Pact, which we'll work on. So our priorities are accelerating progress on achieving the SDG through collective actions here, lifestyle for environment, data for development. And here we'll display the cultural heritage, traditions, craft, dance forms and cuisines, and we'll be highlighting India's booming startup landscape here.
He added that a new work stream on disaster risk reduction (DRR) has been established under India's presidency. The group will work towards achieving disaster risk reduction goals and further enhance global preparedness against disaster. These include building a resilient infrastructure. The member secretary NDMA, Mr. Kamal Kishore, shared how the agenda for disaster risk reduction fits into the G20 framework for a secure tomorrow.
Under the G20 presidency that we are holding now on disaster risk reduction, one of the key priorities is around financing. And we can do that with some credibility because at home, India is one of the few countries that have dedicated financing for disaster risk reduction of this magnitude. If we are serious about making the paradigm shift from relief to risk reduction, then that paradigm shift has to be reflected in how we put money.
G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
The first meeting of the Joint Finance and Health Task Force JFHTF under India's G20 presidency was held in virtual mode on Tuesday, December 20. The participants were the finance and health representatives from G20 and invited nations as well as international organizations. Italy and Indonesia co-chaired the meeting. The task force was set up last year at the G20 summit in Rome to exchange experiences and best practices and coordinate between finance and health ministries in the wake of pandemic. The idea was to promote collective action, assess and address health emergencies with cross-border impact. Former Indian Ambassador Anil Wadhwa outlined the role and responsibility of the Joint Finance and Health Task Force.
There was a need to come up with some collaborative efforts to ensure that there's equitable access to safe and affordable, quality-effective vaccines, also personal protective equipment, particularly in low and middle-income countries. There was also an effect on the resilience of supply chains and vaccine distribution and administration. So the leaders at that point decided that whatever has to be done in this regard has to be anchored in the country's needs and context, and also recognizing the urgent need to act collectively to address the cross-border nature of health emergencies. Therefore, the work of this G20 informal group of financial experts was in focus, and this task force was aimed at enhancing dialogue and also global cooperation on issues relating to the pandemic, promoting the exchange of experiences and best practices, and developing some coordination arrangements between finance and health ministries of countries.
The participants discussed ways and means to continue the collaboration between finance and health ministries for pandemic prevention, preparedness and response. The task force secretariat worked with the Indian presidency and co-chairs Italy and Indonesia to draft the work plan for next year and beyond. It was designed around the Indian presidency's global health priorities for 2023. The work plan was presented for adoption during the meeting. The members expressed commitment for strengthening global health architecture for pandemic prevention, preparedness and response. They would be working with the Secretariat and the co-chairs on achieving the deliverables for the next year. Chairman of the National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization, Dr. N.K. Arora said the funding provisions to tackle the challenges of pandemic under the aegis of G20 needs to be utilized effectively. He cited how India upscaled the development of N95 masks and subsequently the COVID-19 vaccine and served as a pharmacy of the world.
Not only $10.5 billion are required, I think value for money is also absolutely important. And I think a country like India, which basically believes in every rupee or dollar which is used, has to give maximum return on that. And I think our vaccine industry recently has shown that how a very effective vaccine can be available to our people at very, very affordable price not only to the recipient but to the governments, because ultimately these are societal goods. Same is true for diagnostics, therapeutics, equipment which occurred. So I would say that India has a very important leadership role and also share its experience, how we have utilized every bit of resource available to us to maximize the output and the efficiency with which we can use these resources.
India's agenda of One Earth, One Health approach found echoes among the participating members. The advisor of the World Health Network, Dr. Sunil Raina, underlined the importance of surveillance networks and systems to prevent future pandemics.
This pandemic has thrown up us with many challenges. Every country has taken up to this pandemic in its own way. We didn't have a centralized system of approaching the pandemic. And for that, WHO was probably found wanting in that, in helping countries develop strategies which could be uniformly applied across the world. So we had the lower and middle income countries which couldn't get the vaccines, or they were not prepared enough for this pandemic. Or we had other countries who were much prepared, had the vaccines as well. So in that sense, when India thinks of, or when India talks of that, there has to be a centralized agency, and WHO has been in that role for a long period of time now. So they are quite right, because of the fact that then we will be able to have a system which is more equitable in its outreach. And at this point in time, we may be very wary of that fact, that we may not have a very equitable approach as far as delivery of health systems or healthcare is concerned. So when WHO takes the lead, we are pretty much sure of the fact that this fund, which will be a part of PPR, will be utilized in a way which is more uniformly distributed across the world.
G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
As the deliberations on the finance track continued, India's Chief Coordinator Harshvardhan Shringla met with the representatives from Japan, Sweden and India. The discussions were focused on enhancing collaborations in priority sectors like health, education and digital transformation.
G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
The issues pertaining to urban development and how the cities from G20 countries can take a leaf out of the successful models have been an integral part of the G20 deliberations. In keeping with this mandate, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has been organizing the Urban 20 event, or U20. The event started on December 1 and will go on till November 30th next year. Urban 20 or U20 is one of the engagement groups of G20 which provides a platform for cities from G20 nations to discuss important issues of urban development. These include climate change, social inclusion, sustainable mobility, affordable housing and financing of urban infrastructure and propose collective solutions. As part of the U20 event, Gujarat Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel unveiled the logo, website and social media handles of Urban 20 on December 19 in Ahmedabad. Union Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs Hardeep Singh Puri joined the event virtually. He said Urban 20 is a part of city diplomacy, as cities are the powerhouse that drives global economic growth. The minister outlined how India has developed its urban infrastructure.
India is rapidly urbanizing, with the likelihood of it adding a population more than the size of the entire United States to its urban areas in the next 2 decades or so. Urban development has been a top priority for the Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji. Since 2014, we have designed and implemented various missions and schemes covering water, sanitation, housing, development of smart cities, urban transport, etc. It is only fitting that this year India will be hosting this initiative. I see the U20 as a great opportunity for global peer learning and also to showcase the pioneering work being done in Indian cities.
Under the G20 presidency of India, Ahmedabad, a UNESCO World Heritage City, will host the U20 cycle. Along with the Climate 40 or the C40 and United Cities and Local Governments UCLG, the two international non-governmental advocacy groups on urban issues, Ahmedabad will organize a host of events. These include the first Sherpa meeting of the Urban 20 on February 9 and 10, thematic discussions and side events on urban development issues. These events will lead to the U20 Mayor Summit in July 2023.
G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
The year 2023 has been designated as the International Year of Millets to showcase the agricultural importance and nutritional values. It coincides with India hosting G20 under its presidency. In order to raise awareness about the importance of millets, Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosted a lunch for MPs on December 20th in Parliament. He urged that the International Year of Millets should be a mass movement. Briefing media after the meeting, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi quoted Prime Minister saying that the emphasis should be on two aspects. First, promotion of an ongoing nutrition campaign through millets, and second, food items made from millets can be served to the guests who would attend the G20 meetings and events so that they can understand the importance of the millets.
G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
Amidst recent surge in the COVID-19 cases in China, the Ministry of External Affairs said that India is keeping a close watch on the situation. At a weekly briefing on December 22nd, the MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said India's objective is to hold G20 meetings in a physical format. In response to a query if the meetings could be held in a virtual format, he said that whether, as and when, and if the plans or the guidelines have to change, it will be made known. India has planned more than 200 meetings for G20 across the country, and some have already taken place in the month of December.
There are more than 200 odd meetings that we have planned, some of them already taken place during December. Our expectation and our objective is to have these meetings in physical format.
The week ended on a somber note as G20 delegates relished the warmth of Indian hospitality and gear up for further negotiations to see to it that G20 under India's presidency delivers the key message of collective action for a universal good.
G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
This is All India Radio, giving you the world news.
Kunalda Cave, located in a flat, arid stretch of southern Australia, dates back 22,000 years. A sacred site for the indigenous Mirning people and a discovery that transformed scientists' understanding of history. The discovery caused a sensation and forever changed the then accepted notions about where, when and how Aboriginal people lived on the Australian continent. Kunalda was designated a National Heritage List site in 2014. That protected cave and its art have now been vandalized with graffiti, devastating the indigenous Mirning community as authorities search for the culprits. Earlier this year, it was discovered that the cave had been unlawfully accessed and a section of the delicate finger fluting had been vandalized with damage scratched across them into the side of the cave. The flutings are grooves drawn by the fingers of Ice Age humans across the soft limestone cave walls. Iranian footballer Amir Nasr al-Zadani could face imminent execution along with 43 other people, according to witness testimony and statements from inside the country. He is accused of involvement in the killing of 3 security officers, including 2 volunteer Basid militia members during protests in Isfahan on November 16, Iranian state media IRNA reported last week. Weeks later, a witness who is close to Nasr al-Zadani said authorities told them that the 26-year-old could be hanged at Shahid Ali Khani Square. According to state media, the city's Chief Justice Asadullah Jafari said Nasr al-Zadani had been charged with baghi or rioting against authorities. Under Iran's penal code, the sentence carries the death penalty. Witness testimonies and official documents provide evidence that suggests a rushed judicial process in Iran.
In Afghanistan, the ruling Taliban has asked local and foreign NGOs to ban women from working. The Ministry of Economy, in a statement, ordered all national and international non-government organizations to suspend the jobs of female employees until the next announcement. It has warned that if any organization which receives license by the Ministry of Education does not implement the order, their license will be cancelled. Abdul Rahman Habib, a spokesman for the ministry, confirmed the statement to Tolu News. It has come as yet another setback after Taliban put a blanket ban on the education of women in schools and universities. In Afghanistan, women university students across the country are disbelieved, barred by the Taliban from studying and condemned to a life of feeling like caged birds. Upon their return to power, the Taliban had promised to be more flexible, but they quickly reinforced a harsh interpretation of Islam that had marked their first stint in power between 1996 and 2001. The restrictions on women have multiplied in recent months. They are banned from most government jobs or paid a pittance to stay at home, not authorized to leave the house alone or travel in the city, and are excluded from parks and gardens.
In the second and final cricket test between India and Bangladesh at Sher-e-Bangla National Stadium in Dhaka, the guests were 100 runs away from win. The visitors are chasing a victory target of 141 runs. Men in blue were 45 for 4 at the stumps on day 3. Scores so far: Bangladesh first innings 227 runs and 231. India first innings 314 runs and 45 for 4. Budding badminton sensation Geto Sora once again made Arunachal proud by winning the Top Arena Junior International Badminton Championship title in the below 9 years category in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia on Friday. He won the championship title after beating Malaysia's second seed Gerald Tay in straight sets 21-5, 21-16.
India's badminton star PV Sindhu is the only Indian player in the top 25 in Forbes' annual list of the highest paid female athletes in the world. Sindhu, the 2016 Rio Olympics silver medalist, occupies the 12th spot in the list. Japanese tennis star Naomi Osaka tops the list. The 27-year-old made $7 million of her earnings, having won a singles gold and double silver at the Commonwealth Games earlier this year in Birmingham. A quick look at the headlines once again. Sitiveni Rabuka is the new Prime Minister of Fiji. Indian Prime Minister Modi congratulates Sitiveni Rabuka, says he looks ahead to closer ties between the two countries. Afghanistan Taliban asks local and foreign NGOs not to allow women workers. US President Joe Biden nominates Indian-American Richard Verma to the top diplomatic position in the State Department. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina elected as the party president of Awami League for the 10th time in a row. India's President and Vice President send greetings to the nation on the eve of Christmas. Icy winter grips US and the neighboring countries, experience a lowest new record of -42 Fahrenheit under the spell of Arctic storm. And in cricket, India 100 runs away from winning the second and final test match against Bangladesh in Dhaka. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artistes from Iraq. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.